Okay, without further ado, Larry Evans.
Thanks, Brian. It's always great to be back in this part of the country. Yeah, we've this has always been one of my favorite places to come and chat with people. I'm really excited to see what good reflexes this club has, that you've got this many people showed up on such a short notice. Good on you. That's really awesome. Yeah, like he says, we've been doing the mushroom thing here in Colorado since the turn of the century. I used to do the Crested Butte Mushroom Festival when that was a thing. Still do the Eagle Mushroom Festival, and the Vail Festival is no longer going on, but the Telluride Festival is going on. So usually get 2 or 3 festivals every August here in Colorado. What we're going to look at today is one of the places that's been close to my heart for decades now. Back in 2005, I was cruising around South America and found myself in Curitiba looking at the mycological collections in the herbarium they had there. And I ran into a fellow called Stephen Beck, who introduced himself as the curator of the Bolivian National Herbarium and asked if I would be interested in collecting in Madidi. And of course, I thought that sounded like a fine idea. So the next year in January, I was back up there, and for 7 years, I got a permit to collect and record the specimens there in Madidi for the Bolivian National Herbarium in Cotacota in La Paz. So politics and personnel changes happen. I no longer have a permit for that same situation, but I still work closely with the folks at the Bolivian National Herbarium. Our group has placed over 1,500 specimens there, and many of those still defy identification. Let me start here with a little bit of an overview of what we're talking about. I know that South America is kind of alien to a lot of folks. I spent a lot of the time here in the Parque Nacional Madidi. Bolivia is the landlocked country next to Peru and Chile and Argentina there. And in the close-up, you see that we go up into the more northern part, or closer to the equator in this case, right up by the state of Arce in Brazil, and then over very close to Manu and the Madre de Dios River, which forms a border with Peru and Bolivia there. So this is a pretty remote part of the world. It's pretty hard to get there. When we, let's see. Yeah, we'll go back then. Yeah, we've been doing this for, like I say, for about 20 years. After 10 years, we put together the first round of the Amazon Mushroom Field Guide here. Has about 80 or so species described. The main reason for putting this together was because kept getting the same questions from people. There was no basic guide. We kept spending all our time identifying the same 100 or so species that people found because they were the biggest or the most common, or they happened to step on it. So, for this reason, we put this together. It's been tremendously useful, and in 2023, we came out with it in Spanish, and that's been even a lot more useful, I think, for the folks down there who are all native Spanish speakers, of course. So, what Brian mentioned about Amanitas kind of rang true with me. This particular Amanita has been growing. I've collected it for the first time in 2005. Comes up on the campus of the University Mayor de San Andreas, UMSA as we call it, almost every year, and it still remains undescribed. All right, this is the level. Even though we have the material, we see it every year. We discuss it freely. We're quite familiar with it. It still remains undescribed. There's so much material to work with down here that things just don't get the attention that they deserve. A lot of my work up here in the States has focused on burn zones and collecting morels and finding different species in the burn zones. So when some of the areas that I had been visiting burned back in the 2022, 2023 time frame, I wanted to go out to the burn areas and see if I could find unique material, stuff that was coming up only after the burn, stuff that was not found on my normal expeditions and whatnot. And sure enough, as this box shows, we found a number of unique species that we did not find in the normal collecting environment that we did find after the burn, including this one xylariaceous fungus that was growing on the roots of a motaku palm tree. And so we saw this in a couple of different stages of growth. Here's the more mature stuff. I don't need to tell you this remains undescribed, but it remains undescribed. So we, as along with about 40 other collections we made in the fire that year, we do have some DNA collections, but they don't. They're not relative to most anything we can find. One really cool observation that we happened to make in the burn zone was that this red oyster, the pink oyster mushroom, grew naturally on the damaged motaku palm. Now the motaku is a palm tree that is native to the area. It's an oil palm, and it tends to produce, it's propagated by the local people because it produces a lot of oil seeds that they can harvest. And it's been proposed that this tree be used instead of the African oil palm to produce oil on a commercial basis, because of course bringing the African oil palm involves complete clear cutting of the environment. It involves really rearranging the mycorrhizal ecosystems and everything else. This native tree would probably be a much better fit for being able to produce oil down there. Again, commercial interests don't usually discuss better or worse alternatives. But seeing this pink oyster was a really kind of a breakthrough moment for me, and I realized that this was probably a species that we could take advantage of because of some of the problems that are in the upper Amazon area, the Rio Beni, where I've been doing all this study. So we find this pink oyster in a lot of natural environments. It tends to get clusters about the size of your hand, no bigger than that. It grows on a wide variety of tropical hardwoods, and we were able to cultivate it. And the reason that we're keen to cultivate this mushroom is that the main source of protein for most of the people who live along the Beni River are the fish. And again, the Amazon has some of the most amazing fish populations. The World Biodiversity Center for Catfish is in the Amazon, over 500 species. And again, these fish are a primary source of protein for the people who live by the river. Unfortunately, illegal mining has really messed up a lot of the riparian areas upstream. They use mercury to coagulate the gold. This mercury gets into the river, it pollutes the fish. The mercury bioaccumulates in the fish get tumors and ugly rashes and other weird stuff on them. And when the people eat these fish, then they have, the children have birth defects, and you basically have people who are incapable of ever being able to care for themselves, having to be managed by the very poor people who are their families and who are living in the riparian zone. So it's been really, we're not going to stop the illegal mining. We're not going to change the price of gold and disincentivize this sort of hideous behavior. But what we can do is we can replace the fish with the mushroom, and that's the one thing that we've been trying to do in these in this environment. This is how you get around up there. This is the rivers are the main source of transportation. I'll show you in a minute that the Chinese have just helped the Bolivians put in a big bridge across this river and get better access into some of the more remote parts, but still a lot of the jungle remains accessible only by these big dugout canoes, and it takes us about 5 hours going upriver to go to the places where we collect the mushrooms. And this is a kind of a breakdown of that area. The one up at the top, the Inundación 94 square kilometers, is where the main threat, as it were, to this area. Rurrenabaque is just downriver or up picture from this, and this would flood, this 94 square kilometers would flood the entire Tuichi Valley. The Chupiamonas people where I've been working with, and put most of this amazing biodiversity under about 270 feet of water. So on top of that, the actual geology is pretty bad. It's sedimentary, it's alluvium and sedimentary clays. So it's not something that is going to be a good bed for a lake. It's a thing that's prone to catastrophic failure. So there's a lot of stuff wrong with this. It's even the price is prohibitive at this point, but it's still something that keeps coming back like a bad penny every year and every administration to try and build this series of dams and sell cheap hydropower to Brazil, because Bolivia has an abundance of cheap hydropower for themselves already. They don't have any need to develop any more hydro dams in Bolivia. So this is the problem. This is the resource that we have had to work with. Excuse me. This is a mountain of sugarcane bagasso, and this is the byproduct. You can kind of see the factory in the back there, and this is where your sweetener comes from, and this is the byproduct of that sweetener. It's kind of straw-like stuff, and it comes out of there after being extracted at high temperatures and whatnot. It's in pretty clean state. It's really a good substrate for the pink oyster mushroom, and we've been able to grow it grows quite well on that. We've been using calcium hydroxide to give it a basic sterilization. We'll purify the substrate in that way. And then we've taken the bags of spawn that you can see here that are grown by our associates in La Paz and put them in these buckets with the bagasse, And within about 3 weeks, we get results like this. This is nice. It's kind of an experiment, kind of a show-off thing, but hopefully, realistically, we're going to be able to produce mushrooms on the volume that's needed to replace the protein source that the people lose by having to give up on eating river fish. And this is something that we can do in the same buckets. We're keen not to be generating a whole new level of plastic waste. So besides the plastic buckets, we've also, this is another workshop we did, and you see in this one we're using the water bottles. Maybe you can see the blue water bottles that people are holding. Those, that's what, how people get their drinking water. I mean, the local people don't usually, but the tourists all do. They have a great number of these nice clean water bottles. And yet here's another workshop done at Pasaflor. This is probably one of our bigger workshops. And again, we've had over 40 different people who have had success in this way. Probably over 80 people have tried this project. And here you see we cut the bottles in half, fill it with the bagasse and a little bit of the mushroom spawn that you can see in there. And then within about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, we get results like this. And again, this is something that's, people are able to reproduce these results time and again. And that's the real important aspect, is that this continues to happen. We did learn when Wendy and I went down in November, we had a series of workshops. Didn't do nearly as well as the workshops that we gave this last January. I think one of the big things is the temperature. The ambient temperature was so much hotter in November, we had to give people extra attention, extra information to keep their mushrooms out of the sun, because even an hour exposure would be enough to raise the substrate temperature, for that type of stuff. So it was a real learning curve, both for myself and for the participants, because I had to adapt my understanding to a very new set of environmental conditions and a bunch of limits that we didn't have before. And there's our group, the group of folks that was at the classes there. This is another aspect of the program we've been doing. I'm working with Alejandro and Owen here. We're putting the spawn that was grown up from the reishi, from the Ganoderma that you saw. That's been grown up. We're re-inoculating it into this fig tree in this case, and trying to see if we can enhance the amount of reishi that is being produced in the country. Right now, the Bolivian people are paying almost $1 for a little packet of the coffee with reishi in it, right? You maybe you've seen those around here. That is, and it sells like gangbusters, because at 12,000 feet elevation, that amount of reishi really gives you a boost. We kind of dismiss reishi as kind of almost a medicine, but I assure you, if you're in a low oxygen environment, or if you're at high elevation, the difference between having a shot of reishi or not, or having reishi with your coca leaf or not, is really perceptible. And it's perceptible to the point that a lot of Bolivian people and laborers are, actively buying this stuff, which is being grown and produced in China. And you have the same or better material growing wild in your forest right here that can be harvested by the people who are out there at any rate. And hopefully the idea is to close the loop, right? To be able to produce the mushroom in the country and sell it in the country without having to go through the whole foreign exchange project. So this is probably a little bit further before we'll have solid results about this. But Owen, the young man in there, has already cultured 5 of these different species from down there, and he's doing growth experiments and trying to find out what the cultivation potential is for these mushrooms. One cool thing that we kind of have learned going back and forth, I over the space of these 20 years, I've gone pretty much every week in January, almost every week in December, every week in February, and this year we went during the month of November. Okay, so I often would see changes from one year to the next, depending on where we were in the season. But this mushroom here called Ceruleu tenuipes, which we call X10, because we would see this collections of this so many times. You get this yellow business off in the corner, and you go, "What's that?" It's like it's X10. It looks a lot like Flammulina volutipes. Even you see the kind of a fuzzy stipe that it has on there. Local people don't have any tradition of eating this mushroom. Local invertebrates do. It's devoured by invertebrates. And it was really interesting for me, after not having seen this mushroom in the January, February window, when we came back in November, it was all over the place. So for me, this is just kind of a first-hand understanding of how much the seasonality has shifted in this particular ecosystem. It's moved the fruiting date of this mushroom around by 60 or more days. And now what the long-term effects of these types of shifts will have on the insects and animals that eat these kind of mushrooms, I'm not in any position to predict what might happen, but that shift is certainly happening.
Wow.
This is a picture of Wendy with the first reported example of Termitomyces in Bolivia. Here it is growing on top of the termite mound, and you kind of see it next to the knife there. You get an idea of how big this mushroom is. It's a very important source of protein in Africa. It's been reported in 3 other countries in South America. This is the first time in Bolivia. But again, if this mushroom is something that can be propagated, it's a fantastic source of protein, delicious mushroom, and grows on termites. Some a little bit closer examination. Another mushroom that grows on termite nests is this Lepiota spinospora. This is deadly poisonous, however, and so this mushroom is definitely not the one that you want to pluck off the termite nest and nibble down. This is also pretty widespread. We found this in Jamaica as well as a number of places in South America. It always seems to be associated with termite nests. It always seems to be growing on the termite material.
Wow.
Here's another one. Never saw it until, well, saw it many years ago, but then hadn't seen it until, again, this November time. It's in the Wolfopora group, right? Poria cocos, maybe you've heard of that. This medicinal mushroom that we find growing in mycorrhizal associations has a big sclerotia that forms in the mycorrhizal association with trees. Found this twice in November, haven't seen it for years. Really fascinated by the fact that we've got these medicinal mushrooms that are turning up that again have not been analyzed to any extent, and nobody's done any research on these other than just to report their existence.
Wow.
This is a kind of a cool one. This little telostoma is a very strange bird. It grows in dry dirt, and in the tropics, especially in the rainforest, there's no dry dirt. So how did this guy miss the memo? The only place that I ever find this is where people build a house. They put stakes down in the ground and put flooring down. And they put the house on top, and so there's space underneath the structures where there's some dry dirt. Every single one is, you'll find ant lions under there, and you'll find these Telostomas growing under there. I don't know how they ever made it for millions of years without people building shelters so that they could have a dry space to hide. But there you have it. They somehow managed to live in little dry islands underneath people's houses and communicate around. One interesting thing I've noticed with a lot of the puffballs, the lands I'll mention here, once they get to a certain point of ripeness, no ant will go near a puffball. It's like there are so many different root, if you will, so many different lineages that the puffballs and the earth stars and the stalk puffballs like this come from. They come from all these different lineages, and yet they seem to have converged not only on this form of being a dry, dusty ball, but they also seem to have converged on something that keeps ants disinterested in them, because they really avoid ripe puffballs of any stripe. So I don't know. I figure if you've got more questions than you've got answers, you're asking the right questions, right? If you don't have, yeah. So here's another fascinating big reishi mushroom that we found down there. It did stain dark chocolate brown on the hymenium when we scratched it, and you can see it had a pretty irregular form. It never got capitate, never really changed this kind of amorphous form that it got. When we came back almost 2 months later, that's what we saw. The reishi, Ganoderma in general are munched really, really effectively by beetles. The beetles just love these things, and if we find anything left at all, it's usually looks like it's a sieve. Been eaten by so many different beetles. This is our research, our outdoor laboratory here. The work on the side of the porch, and you see the little microscope behind me there. We got one of those little portable microscopes. It does allow us to do a surprising amount of microscopic work and identification. We're seeing the Chylocystia on one of the mushrooms that we identified there. You get an idea of, the type of the level of clarity that you can get. It's more than sufficient for some things and is completely insufficient for others. Yeah, this whole area is some of the last remaining primary rainforest in the world, and again, its inaccessibility has done a lot for that. But it's indigenous land. It's being infringed upon and trespassed on, and timber's being cut. Animals are being trafficked out of there. And a lot of the fires that have been set down there were set by people who are keen to clear land for either cattle ranching or African palm oil development. And a lot of the logging operations that happen, actually they hire hunters to come with the logging operations and shoot the local wildlife so that they can feed the logging crews. And as a result, we've pretty much seen the extirpation of the white-lipped peccary in a lot of the areas where we've been visiting over the time. Here's a capybara. These cute little guys are the largest rodent in the world. They live on the rivers. They feed the jaguars, and they eat a lot of Canabrava. And there's the jaguars. We work with an outfit called Senda Verde. You'll have the contact stuff at the end here. But sendaverde.org is an animal rescue outfit. All the people who, when they're trafficking animals, when they've got a boatload of parrots and monkeys, the people go to jail theoretically, and the monkeys and the parrots go to Senda Verde. They don't get any help from the government about this, but well, this jaguar here's one example. It's a kind of a habit to give a young lady a baby ocelot or a wild cat on her quinceañera, and that cat usually lasts about 6 or 8 months before it reaches sexual maturity, and then the entire apartment is reduced to ribbons. The young lady comes back one day and her drapes are shredded and her couch is shredded and her kitchen is shredded and everything is shredded, and that's when they call Senda Verde and say, help, we gotta, you can't shoot it because my daughter loves this thing, but you gotta get this thing out of my house, right? So a lot of the people who donate and support Senda Verde are people who have made the mistake and bought wild animals in the first place. So this guy's benefactor was a dentist who owned him as a pet for years until he was busted, and then he bought this nice cage for him to live in Senda Verde. So it is a sad thing that these animals are being trafficked, that their habitat is disappearing, and that they don't have any place to go. But Senda Verde has really done an amazing job of being able to keep these critters in their natural environment. You see here, the people are inside the cage where they belong, and the animals are outside the cage where they belong. And this is a marimono, one of the spider monkeys, and I'm giving him the eye there for sure, because he will reach right in and snag the glasses right off your face, and hold them out and wait for you to go in the banana room and bring him out some bananas, Dan, and they're pretty merciless about this. They understand that we're weak and they're strong, and that we can be manipulated. So it's good. It's good that we have that fence. It's good that we're on the inside and they're on the outside, except they're away from the banana room. So, but Senda Verde is a really amazing place. This is Vicky Osio, the director. She is there nursing one of 14 howler monkeys that came in a shipment, and the howler monkeys, until they're about 5 weeks old, they lack the ability to thermoregulate, and so they basically have to be perched on a human or on somebody's shoulder or something all 24/7 until they grow out of that phase. And so you can see the type of dedication that's required to be a volunteer at Senda Verde. There's a lot of different levels of stuff that people do, but this is the kind of people that we work with. Here's a yellow squirrel monkey, and these little guys are also all over. All the monkeys are on kind of an island that is located between 2 rivers, and they can't cross the rivers. In fact, they're realizing now that a lot of speciation in the monkey populations is probably caused by the fact that they cannot cross rivers, or that they have only crossed rivers very rarely in geological time. And so we actually have an interesting thing. They're doing a rewilding project, and on the side of the mountain that the monkeys can get to, they have introduced the monkey food and the seeds and the stuff that monkeys like, and that half of the mountain has erupted and grown in a very different way. On the other side, where the monkeys don't have access, you see mostly the chaparral and the Yungas type shrubbery that you get when you don't have the monkeys there. So this, the rewilding program also includes butterflies, caterpillars, turtles. Here we got a little bit of there's a spider monkey problem right here. Sometimes they do get in the inside the cage, and they like a hug. They like a hug as much as anybody. But if you don't respond in the right way, they're also quite happy to bite you, and they really can leave a good bite. So it's a bit tricky playing monkey psychologist in this type of place. And again, another aspect that I think is really key, very close to everybody's heart, this is the cacao. You probably have some of this in your system right now if you're an average American. This is where chocolate comes from. And as mycologists, I'd like to throw down the gauntlet, offer you the challenge. You want to get rich? Figure out how to get the rest of the cacao to market. Over 2/3 of all the cacao grown never makes it even to the first stage of market. Okay, it rots on the tree or on the ground. It never leaves the field. And because of this, this is one of the limiting factors and one of the expensive aspects of cacao production. Trying to maintain and keep sanitary your cacao growing operation is a real challenge, and nobody's figured out how to combat the fungi that eat a lot more chocolate than we do, that's for sure. So, one more quick look here at the area of the indigenous people of the San Jose Chibiamonas folks. This is the yellow territory is the native territory that they're working on. Starts here. Here's Medee Jungle Lodge where we've been at. The burn zone that I was showing you was right down here. The road now goes from Mernabake here, all the other side of that green line, all the way to Ixmiamis at the top of the map there. And Ixmiamis is on the border with Peru. And there's a road on the other side of that border that goes all the way to the new $3.5 billion port that the Chinese just built outside of Lima. So if you're not aware of this, it's a good time to, get a little basic understanding of the fact that pretty much since the George W. Bush administration, North America hasn't noticed that it has a southern neighbor down there, and we've kind of ignored a lot of the politics and whatnot. China has not. They are developing the place at a breakneck speed, and they're, really doing a very good job of getting the resources out of South America. So if there is a threat to the local areas, it's not just the the development and the mining that we see, but also the trade in wildlife. That jaguar that you saw is worth $40,000 if you can get his parts, if you can part him out and send him to Hong Kong. That's $40,000 worth of jaguar out there. The pelt, the skin, the teeth, the skull, all sold separately. But that's definitely one of the big issues in wildlife trafficking is the use of animal parts in medicine out there. So here's just a little fun run through some of the stuff that we have turned up. This is a real standard cordyceps mushroom that we see all the time, and it actually went for like 4 years without seeing one. I think the increase in temperature may have had something to do with it. Changes in the primary rainforest may have had something to do with it, but it was really great to see these guys again in 2024 after not having seen them since 2019. This is another one, the Amazonicus. growing on a grasshopper there. And this is also another one that we had not seen for several seasons that we saw, again, by shifting the time, the season, the month, if you will, that we came to visit and getting a little bit different exposure down there. Here we see Owen, again, this is during the hotter time of the year. He's just found this nice Acaria growing there in that rotting log, taken apart. Now these are not all cordyceps. This, a lot of times you just have a bug that got eaten by a bird or something else, and you'll find this, you go, oh, we got a collection here? It's like, no, we just have a dead bug. You know, this stuff happens too. But then we get stuff like this. And this is a beetle larva that we found. The bottom half of that was buried in the log. The beetle was growing inside the log, and the round bulbous structures, the little spots, the perithecia there, those are the cordyceps that are coming out of this beetle. New material. Never found this one before, so this is really cool to see. You know, every year people say, oh, do you find new species? It's like, yeah, we find so many new species that we can't possibly categorize them all. We found, again, Tatiana San Juan and I went through, curated the collection back in 2019 and got 8 new species of cordyceps in just a single day or two. So again, the biodiversity that is present down there and the amount of study the little amount of study that's being done on it does not represent the huge amount of biodiversity that we see down there. Here's one more little cordyceps. There's a little diptera. This is a fly type cordyceps. Interestingly enough, we'll often find 2 different species or sometimes 2 different sexual phases of the same species growing out of the same insect. How does that work? Stay tuned. I don't know. But somehow you'll find the haploid and the diploid or the dikaryon both growing out of the same fly. And last but not least on our tour de cordyceps, this is the Metarrhiza, and this particular cordyceps grows on a wide variety of different insects. We found it on the cycads. We found it on katydids. We found it on, again, this is probably a pentamodium or something, and it's the one that grows on people too. So definitely, if you see the Metarrhiza, don't go sniffing it and trying to see what it smells like or see what it tastes like. They did a TV show about that, you know. So we'll leave those little rascals go. Let them stay on the mantids where they belong. The insects, I think, are really a key part. They're part of the reasons that people are afraid of going down here, and they're also one of the main drivers of the ecosystem. The reason that cordyceps are so successful is because the same chitinase enzyme, the chitin breaking down enzyme, that the mushroom uses to dissolve its spore, to get out of its spore, just like a chicken getting out of its egg. That same enzyme that the mushroom uses to get out of its spore is the same enzyme that is needed to burn right through the chitin exoskeleton of every kind of insect. So this happy accident of biochemistry allows the cordyceps to literally burn right through the outside layer of these insects and start eating the juicy, delicious insect inside. The chitin, again, responds quite brightly under UV, and so we can locate scorpions. This is a wood scorpion that we've got here, as well as other spiders and insects that we find at night because they light up really good when you hit them with the UV. So another aspect of insect life, this is an owl butterfly, which scares the birds off. If you've set out bird food and the owl butterfly comes there first, the birds will never visit because they really got a strong aversion to that particular appearance. You go scare the butterflies off and the birds will come back, no problem. Now we'll take a look at some of the medicinal mushrooms that are seen. Again, I got all these are mentioned in here, but this one has a kind of an interesting story. The same time that we brought this out, and I published this back in 2015, Robert Rogers also came out with his fungal pharmacy revision, and we both mentioned this mushroom. And both sources that we use this mushroom for the same thing. They use this mushroom down in Bolivia to break the fever, to stop dengue fever.
Oh, wow.
Okay, it's one of the more well understood natural remedies, if you will, that the native people use. Robert Rogers at the same time published the use of this mushroom among First Nations people in Canada against smallpox and other fevers. So really fascinating to see that kind of, it's gratifying when you get that sort of validation from another source, even though neither one of us was aware that we'd been working on that mushroom. Here's an example of your Ganoderma, your reishi mushroom. And again, like I mentioned, these things are under constant attack by beetles. You see, this is the underside, and the hymenium, where the beetles have deposited or put their ovipositor in there and got their larvae going. The mushroom has gone and formed its shellac. It's formed its hard shell around those areas where it's been compromised. And even so, the mushrooms will be eaten up by the beetle larvae in a couple of months. And so that's another incentive to be able to harvest and use these mushrooms for medicine. Right now they're looking at like 600 bolivianos a kilo for this type of stuff, which would be much cheaper than bringing it in from overseas. This applanatum type material, pretty common down there, and it cleans up nicely. And this is the one I mentioned that we found here in Colorado too. This is called Brucidola now. It used to be in the polypores, and it used to be under boletes, and it was in a, it's had some lineage issues. But it's a delicious mushroom. We've eaten it down there. We even ate it in Telluride. And it's also very favored by the insects as well. This is another polypore that is commonly eaten. This is the pechuga de pollo. They call it the chicken breast mushroom. And this taught me a really good thing about being culturally aware and asking questions, because I would ask people, do you eat this mushroom? And universally people would say, oh no, I don't eat this mushroom. And then I realized it's like I had all these sources that were telling me that people eat this mushroom, but none of the individuals that I interviewed seemed to have any experience with that. And then I changed my question to, do people eat this mushroom? And then it was universal, of course, everybody eats this mushroom. But asking them if they ate the mushroom, it's poor people's food. So I was implying a negative economic aspect to their situation by implying that they were so poor that they needed to eat this mushroom, and of course they wouldn't do that. So bad on me, but I learned from this that you have to ask, if you want the right information, you have to put the question to the people in a way that's culturally sensitive and relevant to what they're dealing with. So yeah, this is a very commonly eaten mushroom. We eat it every single time we go down there, and as you can see, the invertebrates don't have any trouble with it either. I think it could very well be developed as an alternative protein source, but again, we have to kind of get over the social stigma and prejudice, I guess, that people have about that. Another delicious, or not really, mushroom is Staheliomyces sintus. This is one of the stinkhorns from down there. And yes, it does. It smells like death. And the flies come and they get their little fly fingers on that green slimy stuff, and then they go stand on some poop or something, and that's how the mushroom gets around. It's pretty much, there's no wind transport of spores. It's all completely by insect vectors. And these, again, these maybe last 12, 14 hours, 2 days at the most. They get completely destroyed by their vectors. The little guys who come to visit them take them away. Another cool thing, now it's Silaria. This is Entonema, and it's been shown, although it is a Silaria, we found it all the way up in Texas. We found it eastern Appalachians, in the American Southeast as well. You see it has a very gelatinous interior. I think we have both of the examples here, the more yellowish one and the more whitish one. Like I say, we've abandoned the genus Entonema now, and it's now back in Silaria. I don't know what eats this, but something eats this, because these don't hang around. If we come and cut them open and come back later, they're gone. So some sorts of beasts are probably feasting on these, but we don't have any reports of people eating them. People do eat these. These are relatives of the shiitake. This is Lentinus. Which Lentinus is this? We have like several Lentinus. This is concavus, and as you can see, it grows quite abundantly on fig tree, and fig tree is a very easy wood to produce around there. These are high protein food, good and nice and chewy type of thing. If you get them early enough, they're quite a delectable mushroom. If you let them go longer, they get pretty chewy. But again, you get a lot of growth on a fairly small investment of time and energy. And these have been very popular with people who've taken our classes. It's another local species that people are just propagating on wood. And again, fig is pretty easy to obtain. It's a parasite on a lot of other trees, and so a lot of figs get cut down and are available to use for substrate. And we even found some of the good old bolete family down there. This is Phlebopus, and the Phlebopus is kind of like, most swillists wish they could be a Phlebopus. That's about the nicest thing you can say about a Phlebopus. You can eat it, and that's the important thing. So that takes us to here, and to here, and to the message that everybody's
now I'm a mushroom guru, I get questions all the time. Somebody's got a woody conch or a pile of yellow slime. It ain't about science, man, it's more about me. Cause the only thing they ever wanna know is, can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Oh my. It might be a hebelone growing on some bones, or maybe it's a truffle pack full of pheromones. Looking like a turd, or looking like a treat. The only thing they ever want to know is, can you eat it? Can you eat it? I tell them they can eat any mushroom once. There it is, right down there by your feet. With a name like poison pine, now are you sure you wanna eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Oh my! Eat it, can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? It might be high grass meat, pretty as a flower, or maybe psilocybin packed full of psychic power. Growing on a turd, or growing on your feet. The only thing you ever want to know is can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Oh my! Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Can you eat it? Well, it came to my mind the way it always does when I watch that little mycelium buzz, like a bunch of mosquitoes down there at the pond, and all the froggies in the chorus try to sing along. So I gave up on mushrooms, I couldn't take it anymore. And then I found myself on a wildflower tour. The girl showed us Terrillions and then a maze. I looked her in the eye and I said, tell me, sister, please, can you eat it? Can you eat it?